Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running nationally syndicated radio talk show. Everyone, hey, welcome into the program. I have so much on my mind that I wanted to kind of get it all in order. And I just want to say first off, welcome into the program. I hope you're doing well. And you are ready for today's program, which is going to be Ralph Mon. We'll bring him on in just a moment. But before we get to that, computeramerica.com is where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, show notes, articles, all that and more. Social media links. You can find all that at computeramerica.com, which is going to come in handy for today's show because Ralph does a good job of putting together, not even a good job, a great job at putting together the show notes to, really keep tabs on everything. If you're busy, if you're driving, if you are away from your computer, don't worry about it. Ralph has you covered and everything will be right there in the show notes. Very, very simple. Also, while you're there, check out some of the other stuff. So some of the things that I have on my mind, I was just reading about it right now. First things first is that for those who are ancient history buffs for Computer America, they would know that Computer America got its start at, first of all, at I think it was like Florida State College or something like that. But no, at WJNO, 1290 WJNO down in South Florida. So just wanted to give a special, hopefully everything's going well in the very rainy part of South Florida where Computer America had its start. We have a lot of friends, family, and colleagues down there, and hope everyone is staying high and dry and, dealing with this inundation of rain. I'm from the area and I have never seen rain like that. And I hope that everyone out there is just, doing the best that they can because that is a lot of water. It's crazy. So there's that. And second of all, we have like a little news story we're going to talk about real quick before we get into our regular segment, because our regular segment, Ralph has transformed his segments, being our science and technology trends correspondent, into a very lean machine. It's a very good format. I'm very happy with how it's turned out. But before we get to that, like we normally do, we're going to talk about mouse jigglers. Yes, they're something which I'm hoping is going to have kind of a Streisand effect, which is, you try to bury something and it just gets more popular. I think this might be like, for Wells Fargo's 10,000 employees, they might have to find a different mouse jiggler, but for everyone else out there, it's a pretty cool device. And, Ralph just found out about it and, thought a lot of you out there could as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and bring Ralph on. Ralph, welcome back onto the program. Sorry for my meander, but welcome back onto the program. How you been?
It's great to be back. And yes, what a revelation. The whole story about Wells Fargo firing a bunch of people because they were using mouse jigglers, which I had no idea. When you first said that to me before we went on air, I thought, okay, there's a little cage, a little mouse, and you jiggle them to wake them up. No, this mouse. This guy.
Yeah, no, it's not the scientific mice that we talk about on the show often.
Yes, right.
No, and you're exactly right. For all who are completely in the unknown, there's a lot of different variations. Popular ones are, two circles or two discs that kind of spin at random intervals and kind of move your mouse in random ways. There are other ones that kind of sit behind your computer mouse and kind of move it subtly. Ralph, all these things are, they have like software ones that are like USB sticks that you plug in, install some software, and it will virtually do it. Those are less desirable because it's actual software running on your computer, much more easy to detect. But the physical ones, so a lot of corporations use things like Microsoft Teams or, other work, Slack or what have you. And they have a notification bubble that shows either you're at your desk, away, or, offline or busy in a meeting, things like that. And Ralph, what would happen would, was that people who don't touch their mouse, and think about throughout your day, are you actively moving your mouse every 3 minutes? That bubble would go yellow, and that would be tracked, or that would be noticed by your boss, presumably. And they would say, Ben always has a green dot, but Ralph has a yellow dot more often than not. What is Ralph doing? Ralph is not working.
Because of coffee.
Exactly. Ralph is not working. And, especially when you work from home, there's so many distractions. There's so many things, like even just getting up and going to the bathroom would lead to a yellow dot, stuff like that, which is not what the yellow was supposed to signify. It's supposed to be a way, not bathroom break. So, Ralph, what they would turn to were mouse jigglers, and this is the first time that we've heard a major corporation somehow, even with the physical ones, were detecting that they were using mouse jigglers, which, by the way, Wells Fargo gave a statement saying, let's see, they have Wells Fargo holds employees to the highest standards and does not tolerate unethical behavior. Ralph, this just coming after, let's see, I think it was back in 2016, they opened like 2 million fake accounts in people's names to open fraudulent credit card lines and had to pay billions of dollars. I'm glad they no longer tolerate unethical behavior, because did they used to revel in it.
Oh man, it's a fascinating story, and it's going to bring up a lot of interesting legal things and scare the what out of a lot of workers. But fascinating technology. What a clever idea, creating something to make people think you're active at your computer or your keyboard, and or both.
So and I'll some of my thoughts real quick about this for everyone out there who's concerned about using them. Seeing how much it has relieved, like my wife, for instance, she's worked from home, and see how much it relieves her stress to not have to be like, oh, did I touch my mouse in the last 3-5 minutes? She is as productive, more productive. Like, Ralph, I feel like there's other metrics that you can measure an employee's effectiveness. Give them a certain amount of workload, make sure that they attend all the meetings, make sure that they do, there are metrics for work that should not be, is bubble green or is bubble yellow? And if you are going by that, then you're probably a bad boss. And your corporation is treating your employees like children. Like, are they in their corner coloring with their crayons? They're not actually like, are they doing good work? So, Ralph, what this really says to me is that they care more about the optics and, like, do my employees look busy, rather than having actual measurable, are they good employees? Are they doing good work? That seems secondary to the reason that they got fired. So that's my feelings on that. If you're fired for that, you probably don't want to work there anyways. Now, don't get me wrong. No one wants to lose their job. But hey, hopefully you find somewhere better than Wells Fargo. So there you go.
There you go.
This segment not brought to you by Wells Fargo. Okay, now with that being said, Ralph, sorry for that totally off-topic thing. Let's go ahead. Yeah, so all these for everyone here who is here for the normal segment, let's go ahead and tell the nice folks what we actually do around here.
Yes. This is not the mouse jiggler show.
Yes.
This is all about science and technology. Most of these stories look at where we're going, where we're headed. So what Ben and I do each Friday is look at where we're headed in artificial intelligence, robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics. Wow, you name it, all across the board. And here's the key to this show. If you're brand new to the show, welcome. Here's the deal. Ben and I give you an oasis of positive news thanks to the world of science and technology. You're going to leave today's show feeling better, feeling optimistic in a world of horrors and a world of craziness. No, this is a place of sanity thanks to science and technology.
Perfect. And yeah, so for everyone out there who's watching the video portion, that's going to come in handy. Lots of videos, lots of visual representations. If there is a visual component, we will try to describe it for those who are simply listening. And of course, if you miss it, you can always go back in the show notes and you can find the video. Story number one is actually very apt for talking about visual representation, because sometimes, you just gotta see it. And I never really, realized this because, when you think about chemistry and you think about these things, like, you think it's math, it's science, it's written down, you can study it, it's just, word, spreadsheets, all that kind of thing. But no, Ralph, actual folded proteins are best kind of explored visually, and that's kind of hard to do. And AI does that very, very well. And I talk about that because AlphaFold, we covered that a number of years ago. That was like the first crowdsourced program. You, I, or anyone out there could get a random protein on your browser, and you could manipulate it. You could fold it, you could tweak it, you could twist it, you could, kind of play with it in a 3D space and actually help scientists, because scientists were having to do this themselves. It was tedious, it was time consuming, Ralph. That's why they crowdsourced it to millions of people. But hey, thanks to the miracle of AI, and you never stop hearing about it, it looks like we're taking another step forward. So let's talk about DeepMind.
Yeah, well, let's get into it. And here's a little bit of a super geeky heads up warning. This is some geeky stuff, folks, and I don't pretend to fully understand it. What we have today are 4 stories. I don't create this content. I curate it. I go out there and look for stories. I grab the essential points, put them in the show notes with links, pictures, and so on. And sometimes I add tutorial material to augment the articles. So again, as Ben mentioned, come out to computeramerica.com. Get the show notes. If you're watching us on video and or if you're listening to us, it'll give you all the details and you can dive much deeper. But with that said, here's the headline. This is from livescience.com. Headline: DeepMind's AI program AlphaFold3 can predict the structure of every protein in the universe and show how they function. Okay, that headline, I had to learn more, and believe me, did I ever. It's a fascinating topic. But first, a little setup here. DeepMind is an artificial intelligence technology that uses neural networks and machine learning to crack a broad range of problems, from protein folding, which we're going to be talking about, all the way to things like the game Go. And the company DeepMind began as a London-based startup in 2010 and was acquired by Google in 2014. It's now a subsidiary of Alphabet Inc., the parent company of Google. So there's a little history about DeepMind to get us started. But now let's get to the news. DeepMind has unveiled the 3rd version of its artificial intelligence-powered structural biology software, AlphaFold. So we're now talking about the 3rd iteration, which models how proteins fold. And stand by, because the first thing I thought was proteins folding. Okay, what's that? Well, we're going to learn more about that in just a moment. Little side note, AlphaFold is an AI system that predicts a protein's 3D structure from its amino acid sequence. This is geeky stuff, folks. And then in the show notes, what I do is I'll insert tutorial stuff to help me, because I go, wait a minute, what's this all about? But can help you too if you want to get into this. So if you want to understand how proteins fold and why it's crucial for several reasons, I've got a big giant side note in the show notes. But I'm going to jump down in the side note and talk about the impact of understanding how proteins fold on understanding disease research. So here's the little bit here. Misfolded proteins, when proteins don't fold properly, that's linked to many diseases, including Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So investigating protein folding can provide insights into disease mechanisms and potential therapeutic targets. In summary, protein folding is essential for studying protein structure, function, and related to diseases. So this is the why behind all this. What's the motivation? So going on now to the news, the new AlphaFold3 helps scientists more accurately predict how proteins, the large molecules that play a critical role in all life forms from plants and animals to human cells, how they interact with other biological molecules, including DNA and RNA. Doing so will enable scientists to, quote, truly understand life's processes, DeepMind representatives wrote in a recent blog post, and I have a link to that blog post in the show notes too. So there's the importance of this. And by comparison, its predecessors, AlphaFold and AlphaFold2, could only predict the shapes that proteins would fold into. And that was still a major scientific breakthrough at the time. But AlphaFold3's predictions could help scientists develop biorenewable materials, crops with greater resistance, new drugs, and more, the research team wrote in a study published in the May 8 journal Nature. And I have a link for that in the show notes too, if you want to really geek out, folks. And trust me, that article in the journal Nature is extraordinarily geeky.
Yeah, for sure.
This is pretty wild stuff.
And for those who are watching the video portion, kind of looking at that, I guess they gave an example. If you click through to the image, they actually give you one of the proteins. So if you're simply listening, I apologize. I'm going to make you go watch the video.
Yes.
But yeah, they this is an example of like what they would give people or what a protein kind of looks like.
Yeah.
And you can see it spin in 3D, and you can actually highlight, and it looks like for everyone out there who's just listening, think of like a bundle of yarn. It's like someone took 2 spools of yarn and just messed it up. And you can actually go through and kind of click on any of these little strands in here. It'll zoom in and then show you the proteins within them.
Isn't that something?
It's so complex, like Ralph is saying, but at the same time, like it's all, I hate to say like real, Ralph, but all of it has a purpose. It's not just made up. This isn't just, fantasy. It's very complex.
Oh, it's extremely complex. And this next bit from the article is, warning, very geeky. So given a list of molecules, the AlphaFold3 program can show how they fit together. It does this not only for large molecules like proteins, DNA, and RNA, but also for small molecules known as ligands, Ligands. I had never heard of this, which bind to receptors on large proteins like a key fitting into a lock. Again, super geeky stuff here. AlphaFold3 also models how some of these biomolecules, which are organic molecules produced by living things, how they are chemically modified. Disruptions in these chemical modifications can play a role in diseases, for example. AlphaFold3 can perform these calculations because of its underlying machine learning architecture, and training data encompasses every type of biomolecule. Oh my gosh. Now I have another giant side note in the show notes, because I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, I need to know more about biomolecules. And I've got a whole bunch of information in here if you want to get into it. Basically, though, real quick, biomolecules, they include carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids, and proteins, and each type of biomolecule plays a unique role contributing to the complexity of life on Earth. So there's a little side note here, but there's more details in the show notes. And the researchers claim that AlphaFold3 is 50% more accurate than current software-based methods of predicting protein structures and their interactions with other molecules. Now, it's a little bit of a reality check here. At first, this is going to sound bad, but then it comes back to a happier place. However, unlike its predecessors, AlphaFold3 is no longer open source. This means scientists cannot use custom versions of the AI model or access its code or training data publicly for their research work. But wait a minute. However, scientists looking to use AlphaFold3 for non-commercial research can access it for free using the recently launched AlphaFold server. They can input their desired molecular sequences and gain predictions within minutes, but they can perform only 20 jobs per day. So it's a kind of an interesting twist at the end here that it's not going to be completely open to the public or open source anymore. But on the other hand, if you're doing non-commercial research, maybe in medical research, educational institutions, research facilities, and so on, it could be still accessible.
I completely understand why they commercialized it, because as you were talking about the ligands and stuff like that, that's, I was just thinking, that's my brother has a chemistry degree, and that's what he does. He's in the private sector, and what you just described, like, it really rang a bell with what he was talking about, because I don't understand any of it, but I recall him using some of these words that you used. I'm like, that's his whole job. Like, his job was to do essentially what you just said and what AlphaFold3 does. So, like, if there was ever a time to commercialize it, it's when it's starting to take the place of researchers in, kind of private companies and things like that. Not saying that, like, he's suddenly out of a job, but it's more like, I remember him sitting there with, special software and just kind of, guessing about this and, thinking about his education and going with that and kind of, Ralph, like, educated guesses to, I could imagine that using AlphaFold3 to get all possible things, not just what you can kind of think of or what you can intuit, and then kind of work backwards from that list that you are given. Ralph, like some of the projects that he has worked on in the past include like how to keep flies off of olive trees without using pesticides. How to make perfume kind of last longer and, you know, kind of be better without using some of the more rare ingredients. How to make batteries without those rare ingredients. Like, Ralph, that's hopefully a lot of the research. Like, if AlphaFold3 can do what it says it can, it would lead to breakthroughs in a lot of different areas, you know, from manufacturing to pharmaceuticals to you name it.
Yes.
That could be a huge, huge boon to people and, like, you know, very, very good news. So I hope it is as good as they say it is.
Yeah, pretty. And if it's a geeky way to start off today,
absolutely.
The next story is a little more user friendly.
Absolutely. So yeah, you know, and it's not a prehensile tale, but it's darn close. So we're getting there, Ralph. We're getting there. Story number 2. Let's go ahead and jump on over. If you've ever thought, if I only had another thumb, then what the heck are you thinking? But also, science has you covered. Let's talk about this. And the pictures are actually hilarious.
They are great. By the way, that brings up a good point. If you're watching us as a video, you're going to have no problem seeing what we're talking about right now. But if you're listening to us as a podcast, once again, please come out to computeramerica.com, get the show notes, get the links. This story comes from an outfit called Metro and also an article in Forbes magazine. Headline, a robotic third thumb controlled by your toe, should be toes plural, you'll explain in a moment here, could just be what you need. It's just, I couldn't resist this. It's so fun. But this also has some really interesting implications for robotics going forward. We'll see in a moment here. So it starts off with this fun bit. Who hasn't wished they had a spare pair of hands now and again? You might be trying to unlock the front door with your arms full of shopping or rushing to prep dinner, but can only chop so much at a time. Well, humanity has just taken a step closer with an extra thumb, paving the way for future robotic limbs. That's the really important part of this. Yes, people wearing this thing is one thing. It's kind of interesting, but its implications for future robotic limbs is, I think, really the payoff here. But anyway, here we go. The third thumb created by University of Cambridge augmentation and prosthetics designer Danny Claude, is a 3D printed robotic thumb controlled by a user's toes. What? The third thumb straps to the palm opposite the user's natural thumb and has 2 degrees of freedom or movement. It's powered by wrist-worn motors, and the wearer controls its movements and the speed of these movements using a pressure sensor placed under each big toe. Okay, pressure exerted on one toe pulls the thumb across the hand, while pressure on the other toe moves the 3D printed digit up toward the fingers. And again, you have to see this in action. You have to see the video that Ben is showing you right now to get this. The controls are wireless and proportional, so faster movement from the toes will result in similarly quick movement with the third thumb. Easing up on the toe pressure will release the thumb back to its original position. So much about this is kind of hilarious. One of the aims of the third thumb is to augment the human body, and one-handed tasks carried out while wearing the prosthetic in testing include peeling a banana, opening drink bottles, and playing cards. A team from Cambridge University also said it's incredibly easy to use, testing the device on almost 600 members of the general public at the 2022 Royal Society Summer Science Exhibition late last year. And the team stressed, however, the importance of testing this new technology on a wide demographic to ensure it works for everyone. So I see 2 things here. As I mentioned at the outset, the implications of this for adding a third thumb to robotic devices, that's one thing. But if you're a person who unfortunately maybe has an arm or a hand amputee and you have just one functioning arm and hand, adding this device to your capabilities could really be a life-transforming thing for you if you have that disability. So cool stuff.
Yeah, and the video is hilarious. Just I guess they held some kind of event where they were just kind of showing people, as they said, between the ages of 4 and 96 were using the device. Yeah, it's really, really cool. Like, I never knew that this thing was controlled by the toes. I thought they had kind of the armband around your upper arm. And I thought it was controlled by muscle contractions with that, but placed under each big toe. That's actually very, very cool. This is all about accessibility. And while Ralph, we might touch on this on an earlier show, but what happens when, not just accessibility for people who lose limbs or, or have some kind of, disconnect in their spine or something like that. But what happens when, Ralph, it's like, oh, this job is actually much easier with a third thumb. Here's your company issued third thumb. Get used to it. And what happens when we start giving prosthesis to people who we just start making people better. We just make them more productive and what happens, Ralph, when things are like recommended because they're better and not just because we're trying to fix people. What happens then? Curious world. Curious world. So there you go. Story number 2, very fun. Story number 3. This is going to be, and before everyone, kind of just rolls their eyes and groans about another battery story, don't worry. Battery developments are happening every single day. And, you can look at all of your recent iPhone, Samsung, whatever. Things are lasting longer, charging faster, and, are just better every single day. It's just, incremental steps, not leaps and bounds, but incremental steps. Let's go ahead and talk about this one, though. Story number 3, and it's about an ultra-thin battery. So these aren't probably going to be for your cell phones, but they might lead to some other really cool innovations.
Yes. Well, this headline from CNBC, and of course, the story was covered elsewhere as well. I couldn't resist this headline. Here we go. Scientists develop ultra-thin battery for smart contact lenses that could be charged by your tears. What? Wow.
Apple heard charged by tears, and they're like, we need these. We have so many people that are crying. Yes, we need these.
So, though, this is really pretty remarkable. A new ultra-thin battery created by researchers at the Nanyang Technological University School of Electrical and Electronical, what are these electronical, and that's an odd word. Anyway, this institution in Singapore. Okay, so the ultra-thin battery created by these researchers is about 0.2 millimeters thick, making it thin enough to fit inside a 0.5 millimeter contact lens. Now, remember, a millimeter is 1/1000th of a meter. So we're talking about half that of that 1/1000th, for example, for a typical contact lens. The battery is powered by a biocompatible saline solution and serves as an alternative to lithium-ion batteries and other power sources. While the battery can be charged through a traditional wire or chemical method, it can also use the glucose in your tears to power up. It's just amazing somebody thought about this. And here's the guy who did. Scientist Lee Seok Woo said a scene from Mission Impossible movie inspired his latest invention, batteries for smart contact lenses. So in the 4th film of the Mission Impossible series, which I love those movies, they're so ridiculous, you gotta love them. So in the 4th film of the series, an agent wears contact lenses capable of facial recognition and eye tracking. And Professor Lee wanted to make that lens a reality. And Lee's experience in battery components served as a jumping off point for his foray into wearable technology. He realized smart contact lenses would need safe and compact batteries, which would be crucial for advancing development of these devices. Wow, what a challenge. So to, again, emphasize the challenge here, contact lenses themselves are extremely thin, as we mentioned before, 0.5 millimeters. Thus, the size and flexibility of these batteries are key to preventing user discomfort, of course. And here's a quote from Dr. Lee. The thickness of our battery is about 0.2 millimeters, which is about twice the thickness of a human hair. That gives me a human way to relate to that scale. And the battery is coated with glucose. And when dipped into saline solution, the glucose will react with the sodium and chloride ions to charge it. So that's how your natural tears operate as a way to create the energy needed to run these smart contact lenses. Now, this is really, really early nascent research. So you're not going to have these at your Costco next week.
No.
This is something that's being researched, but it's fascinating. The implications of this, if they can pull this off and make it viable and viable at scale, could be profound.
No, this is someone who is, not just tackling, because there's so many different steps to this, including like user interface, the technology for actual eye tracking and facial recognition,
right?
The camera specialist. This is just someone with experience with batteries going at it. You would need a lot more departments to get this anything near, near people's eyeballs. But still, it's a very, it's a very interesting way to kind of approach it, and could have different implications for, hey, maybe people who can't see, and you could maybe bypass the eyeball, put in the contact, bypass the eyeball, connect it to a brain interface, something like that. Hey, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to kind of do it. Although I will say, Ralph, I do want to highlight that he was inspired by Mission Impossible. So many people out there, like in the early days of technology, were like, they would call things that were really revolutionary, like Star Trek style or Star Trek, esque,
right?
Like tricorders and communicators and stuff like that.
Yes.
That, Ralph, scientists are just people too. They need to be inspired by something to make something. They don't just, scientists don't just one day and realize, oh, everything needs to look like this. They need to do this. They need to do that. No, scientists are people, and they get inspired by pop culture just like everyone else.
Sure.
So it makes perfect sense that Mission Impossible, while fantastical, like you said, still inspires people to do very scientific things. So always good to see, kind of references like that. Okay, so story number 3, story number 4, kind of speaks to our prehensile third thumb, but this one's a bit different. This one's actually for usability first and foremost, and for people who are unfortunately just can't interact with, in this case, computers like we can, because we kind of take it for granted. Mouse and keyboard persist to this day. They are just wonderful tools that we have. But hey, not everyone gets to, has the ability to use them to their fullest. So story number 4 kind of comes in, and this is certainly, like, maybe not the newest idea. I think, using your tongue, your mouth, your lips, your bite, stuff like that. But this is certainly a new one to me, that it's, I guess, a touchpad. And that is really different for me. It's not just switches or keys or things like that. So, Ralph, story number 4.
Yeah, this one really is different. And usually what we do is end the show with something in medical technology. And you could argue that most of our stories today in some way, shape, or form relate to medical research in some regards. But anyway, we usually end with something that comes from the medical technology world. This story comes from medicalexpress.com, a wonderful website. Headline: Mouth-based touchpad enables people living with paralysis to interact with computers. And so I had to see what that's all about. And if you have the show notes or you're looking at the video, you'll see it's sort of like a mouth insert. It reminds me of when I had braces, and after the braces went away, I had a retainer.
Yep.
And it was shaped to fit to the top of my mouth and so on. It kind of looks like one of those athletic insert things for your mouth guard, that sort of thing, to give you a visual if you're listening to us only. And so here's the story. A company called Augmental. So Augmental is a San Francisco-based MIT Media Lab spinoff. How many of those are there out there? Thousands. So they're a MIT Media Lab spinoff startup deploying technology that lets people with movement impairments seamlessly interact with their personal computational devices. So not just computers, but their smartphone, et cetera, or other devices that use a mouse pointer kind of thing. Augmental's first product is the MouthPad, which allows users to control their computer, smartphone, or tablet through tongue and head movements. So like Ben was saying, we've seen head movement things, eye movements, other things like this used to help people with paralysis control devices. So in a way that's not new, but I just thought that this is a particularly interesting implementation with this mouth insert. So the mouth pad's pressure-sensitive touchpad sits on the roof of the mouth and, working with a pair of motion sensors, translates tongue and head gestures into cursor scrolling and clicks in real time via Bluetooth. Thomas Vega, or I should say Tomas Vega, co-founder of Augmental, noted, quote, "We have a big chunk of the brain that is devoted to controlling the position of the tongue. The tongue comprises 8 muscles." Who knew? I didn't. And most of the muscle fibers are so-called slow twitch, which means they don't fatigue as quickly. So I thought, why don't we leverage all of that capability? And so they have. So people with spinal cord injuries are already using the mouth pad every day to interact with their favorite devices independently. One of Augmental's users, who is living with, who's a quadriplegic, I can't say it today. I don't know what it is. Living with quadriplegia.
Quadriplegia, yeah. Yep.
Thank you. Boy, not enough coffee yet. and so this person who's studying math and computer science in college says the device has helped her write math formulas and study in the library. Use cases where other assistive speech-based devices weren't appropriate. In other words, you're in a library, you're not supposed to be speaking. And so this tongue movement business could help her control the computer in environments where speaking out loud would not be appropriate.
You know, I never really considered that because, and the next sentence is really going to highlight it, but, you know, speech-based devices are so common, but you never really think about, you know, hey, you know, when would you feel uncomfortable not using them? So it's interesting.
Right. Yeah, that was an interesting little nugget. I hadn't thought about that. You're on an airplane, you're in a library, or in any environment where there's general public, in a waiting room at the doctor's office, whatever that may be. You may not want to be going, move cursor up.
I never considered, yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. And it goes on to say about this particular young woman, she can now take notes in class. She can play games with her friends. She can watch movies and read books. Tomas Vega said she is more independent. Her mom told us that getting the mouth pad was the most significant moment since her injury that caused her disability. Augmental generates each mouth pad design using a 3D model based on a scan of the user's mouth. The team then 3D prints the retainer using dental grade materials and adds the electronic components. With the mouth pad, users can, of course, scroll up, down, left, and right by sliding their tongue. They can also right-click by doing a sipping gesture with their mouth and left-click by pressing on their palate. For people with less control of their tongue, bites, clenches, and other gestures can be used, and people with more neck control can use head tracking to move the cursor on the screen. So these guys have really kind of created this holistic approach. And again, that whole bit about where you don't want to have spoken commands, this device can come in and take the place of that and give you that kind of control. Very cool stuff.
and I would guess even for people who you know, can use their voice and, you know, are even in a setting that they could talk like that, maybe this would just be easier on them. You know, they don't have to say everything. It's kind of cumbersome. This might be just faster, easier, more intuitive to use. And all in all, like, this is not, none of this is really new technology, but putting it in this form factor is a really big breakthrough. And that's very, very cool. I kind of wonder about like battery life. Like, I don't know how long it would last. I'm curious, because this device fits in your mouth. Like, you know, I'm curious how big the battery is and stuff like that. But still, very, very cool. And, you know, their website's very helpful in seeing it and, you know, looking at it. So there you go. And hey, it's actually available. It's not just, you know, pie in the sky kind of thing. It's something that is helping people today. So very great story to end on. Ralph, for those who are following along in the show notes, because they're up as of the, you know, let's just say, if you can hear this, you can see the show notes.
Yes.
So for those who are following along, they may notice honorable mentions. These are after our 4 stories. Try to keep it nice, concise, and quick for you. But tell us about the honorable mentions and maybe just go through the headlines.
Yeah, real quick here. This one comes from techradar.com. I thought this was so interesting. Headline, tiny startup bets that you will spend $2,000 on a work laptop with no screen. Spacetop G1 uses AR glasses to deliver a virtual 100-inch display, but it runs on Google Chrome OS. You'll see a picture of a laptop. You'll see these glasses. I'm not talking about big, heavy goggles, folks. Just they look like normal reading glasses. And you put them on and you see in front of you what would be the equivalent of a 100-inch display screen. You can put multiple screens and so forth. Very, very clever idea, because what I like about it, Ben, is the glasses are not heavy goggles.
Right.
I think they've got something going on. If they could do this for Windows 11-based machines, bang, I think you're off and running. So the next story is also here. This is from Inc. magazine. Headline, forget smartphones. IntelliPhones will soon put AI power in your pocket. Analysts predict once-in-a-decade transformation will be unleashed by powerful AI-driven IntelliPhones, successors to smartphones. They don't know when they're coming, though. So this article is sort of a theoretical sort of projection, a prediction kind of article, but I thought the theme was very interesting. Getting AI into our smartphones is inevitable, right?
Yep.
And then the next one is from interestingengineering.com. Scientists create new color-changing sunglasses for windows to block heat. That's a really fun story, and that wraps up our honorable mentions for this week.
There you go. And we'll definitely wrap it up there. And Ralph, I want to thank you so much for getting these together, as always. These are very, very good stories. Stories 1 through 4, even the honorable mentions. You should really go check those out. ComputerAmerica.com. You can find the show notes there. You can see the latest segments from Ralph, and of course, you can also see past episodes of Ralph, because these stories actually keep very, very well. Sometimes things are more timely, and it's more important to get them as soon as you can. But Ralph's segments are always, nice and, kind of seeing ahead, trends, stuff like that, hence the trends part. But ladies and gentlemen, until then, everyone stay dry, stay happy, stay cool, and we will catch you here next time here at Computer America. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.